Let me read you or tell you about Board Policy BCBI, public participation. It states that the board may include a time for public forum and may permit at the discretion of the board president public comments during agenda items. During the meetings where we have limited the number of people here, we will not open for comments. However, we will encourage patrons to email the board with comments by going to our website, usd305.com, and clicking on the Board of Education tab. We welcome your comments. I'm going to start today with a statement, because as we hold today's school board meeting, citizens of all skin colors across the country are protesting and marching for justice in the wake of the death of George Floyd, an African-American man killed by police in Minneapolis, Minnesota. His death is only one of the latest in a generations-long string of unjust killings of Black Americans. The killings are part of centuries of mistreatment of African Americans, which has served to lower their standard of living, worsen their health, increase their justified fear and anger, and shorten their lives. Mr. Floyd's death came at the same time as African Americans have been dying of COVID-19 at much higher rates than white people. We are the school district. We want our places, our schools, to be safe and wonderful places where students of every kind can learn and blossom and grow up feeling encouraged, recognized, challenged, and safe. But we know that the racism that has infected the United States since the first Africans were brought here against their will more than 400 years ago, that racism has not skipped over Salina schools. This is personal to me as a Salina first grader, taking dancing lessons from Bessie Caldwell, Mrs. Robert Caldwell, whose husband was the first African-American mayor. I couldn't understand then why dark-skinned people might be treated differently. And as an education major at K-State, I began paying attention to the status of Black Americans, and I've been paying attention ever since. Some things have gotten better, but in the 40 years since I left college, many things are not better at all. Racism stubbornly endures and resurges and remains horrifyingly respectable among some groups. Now that there are cell phones on the streets, we white people gasp when we finally see unwarranted deadly force. But it's no surprise to African Americans who experience racism on a daily basis, both institutional and personal. That's mostly invisible to us whites. In the past few years, the school district established the Equity Council to learn and discuss and focus on those parts of our schools, our staff, our curriculum, and our school culture, where people of color and people who are different in all sorts of ways bear the brunt of societal discrimination. We don't always know what we do wrong. We're trying to learn and change. I can't speak for the whole board, but for myself, I ask that all of us recognize that racism and discrimination exist, that sometimes we, as the keepers of the system, have a choice of making things better or of maintaining the old status quo. If you can help us make it better, or if you can tell us where we are going wrong, please do. I hope that we all live to see the day when we can honestly say that we have liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will go on now with the agenda. And to start out with, we need to approve the agenda. Do I hear a motion? Emma.
Madam President, I make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Mark, second. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. I guess I did not ask you, Ms. Exline, if we need any changes to that agenda. Thank
Good.
you. Okay, then is there any discussion? Then all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. Next on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda items, which include the minutes of the May 12th, 2020 regular meeting, the personnel report, the financial reports, which include the May bills list, the April treasurer's report, April investment report, April journal entries. It includes approving encumbrance listings, which those include to Eagle in the amount of $59,556.75 for the purchase of a storage area network for the backup restore system, and to Intrado for the renewal of School Messenger in the amount of $24,050, to Johnson Controls in the amount of $25,000 for the annual service agreement for maintenance and repair of the electronic entry systems, to CDWG in the amount of $129,757.55 for the Microsoft licensing renewal, to Cisco Food Service in the amount of $132,000 and Highland Dairy in the amount of $25,000 for Heartland Early Education, to Highland Dairy in the amount of $290,286.37 for food and nutrition services, dairy products, to Great Mind for Eureka Math consumables in the amount of $67,866.41, to Jobs for America's Graduates, Kansas, in the amount of $22,000 for the JAG program for school year 2020-2021. To Curriculum Associates, Inc. in the amount of $25,532 for iReady instructional software, and to Assurance Partners for the annual renewal of the district's insurance package in the amount of $917,347. The consent agenda items also include approving the central high water heater replacement to Superior bid to Superior Plumbing and Heating Company in the amount of $28,202, approving the Heartland Child Care Partnership contracts, and approving the mental health grant request, which is for $279,000 with a district match of $93,000. That's the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda? Jim?
Madam President, I move we approve the consent agenda as.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Gabe? Seconds. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Next on the agenda is the action agenda. So we'll start with the 2020-2021 school site councils with Ms. Eck.
I just need for you to formally the site council membership, council meeting dates for our buildings, board policy ID requires board approved meeting date. So it is recommended that you approve the membership in your packet.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion on this item? Mark?
Madam President, I move we approve the school site council rosters and dates as.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Emma
Emma?
Doherty, second.
Seconds. Is there any discussion on the site council? I want to say thank you to all of the people on those lists who are willing to help with the schools by being on the site council. There's no further discussion. All in favor of these site councils as presented, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Next on the agenda is to set a special meeting for the board retreat. Ms. Exline?
We need our annual retreat, so that meeting, June 16th, and we would meet at Rolling Hills Zoo Conference.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion on that? Jim?
President, I move.
Do I hear a second? Dana, seconds. It's been moved and seconded to approve the special meeting. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Next on the agenda is the 2020-2021 handbooks with Shanna Rector, elementary, middle, and high school.
Well, this is the first time up here. And it is such a beautiful space. We're excited to have that. I want to go ahead and go over the elementary student handbook. And I'm going to go through each one of the handbooks. You've seen the bulk of this information at the last meeting where it was on the discussion agenda. And so now we're bringing this forward for the action agenda. On the elementary handbook, we had no changes from the last meeting. And so I would recommend that you approve the 2021 elementary student handbook as presented.
Do I hear a motion on this? Dana?
Madam President, approve one handbook.
Do I hear a second? Mark seconds. Any discussion? Then all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0.
Thank you. I will go ahead and go through the middle school handbook, and there were some revisions that were suggested from the last meeting. And so you will see those revisions in red in your materials. And so I will go ahead and just highlight those sections that have updates. And so one of the things that we looked at and had some questions about was eligibility and consistency between the middle school handbooks in regards to information on when students would be eligible to participate, and also some of the wording was different in both of the handbooks, so we wanted to make sure that we brought some consistency to those. And so if you will look at the section that is labeled eligibility, or actually, excuse me, the section that is labeled athletics. And so you will see in red that we had the Lakewood Middle School athletics information. All of that has been struck out. I'm not sure what the proper term is there. And so as you can see that we have eliminated that wording there, and we also eliminated the wording for the South Middle School athletics. And if you look, you'll see that the next thing that we have is a joined statement for both Lakewood Middle School and South Middle School. And so we've identified the requirements for participation for athletics and cheerleading practice. And so you'll see those listed there. And then we also made sure that both handbooks had the information about the limited insurance coverage. And so that gets both of the books to have the same language for athletics. Then we'll go to the next section that has a change, and so you kind of have to flip several pages there. And you'll see in red again, Lakewood Middle School, and the title for this one was eligibility. You'll see that we have eliminated the wording that was in Lakewood Middle School, and you'll see that we have also eliminated the wording that was in South Middle School, where it was labeled athletic and activity eligibility. And so if you look at the next section, you will see that we have Lakewood Middle School and South Middle School athletic activity eligibility. So we use the same common terminology for the heading. And then you'll see that we identified the information there about how many classes they needed to pass. Where we got this language was from the athletic handbook. And so now our athletic handbook and our student handbook that goes to all students matches. And so this is based upon information that's from Keisha. You will also see that we had a disconnect where one book said semester eligibility and the other book said at 9 weeks, and the correct information is at 9 weeks. And so you'll see that we now have information correct in both books, and it is based upon the athletic handbook, and then we brought some consistency to the bullets below. Are there any questions about this section?
No.
Okay. And so I would recommend that you approve the 2021 middle school student handbook.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Gabe?
Madam President, I move we approve the 2020-2021 middle school student handbook as presented.
Here a second. Jim seconds. Been moved and seconded that we approve the 2020-2021 middle school handbook. Is there any discussion? Did I say that already? Okay, sorry. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. Now on to high school.
Yes. And so in the high school, we do have one small change there. Again, it's in relation to eligibility. I do want to point out that one of the questions that was asked last time was about unit weight. And we went back in and we looked at CASHA wording, we looked at old handbook wording, and we looked at the athletic handbook wording. And that is the terminology that is consistent across the state and in multiple handbooks. So we did stay with that terminology. That is something that our athletic directors and our administrators and our coaches are very familiar with. And so we use that same terminology. But if you look at the semester eligibility for high school, and it's several pages in there, we did have common language between both Central High School and South High School. But what we wanted to do here is after we went back and looked at it based upon the input from the board, we wanted to make sure that we had some further information, and the information that we added there is about the college class. This is the information that is provided in the athletic handbook, and we did not have this specificity in the student handbook before. And so you'll see that we have added that information about the fact that if the student is enrolled in a college class, there's a little bit different way that they look at eligibility. And so with that, if they're enrolled in a college class, they will still need to be able to pass the 4 classes of USD 305 courses. And so what that is showing you is that there is a distinction there, but then we also made sure that we follow the wording that is in the athletic handbook. Any questions on that section? Yes.
Out of curiosity, perhaps anything else? Assume people that are taking college, those college classes ever throw monkey wrench in somebody's eligibility?
Actually, the reason why we have this added is because we did see that we needed to clarify, because we knew that there was some additional requirements with that college class. And so that's why it went to the 4 instead of the 5 USD 305 courses. And so they keep a very close eye on that when they are working with students to make sure that as they take those college classes that we are able to keep their eligibility. It's one of the things that we also look at if there's ever a reduction in class schedule, like second semester for seniors, things like that. Eligibility is at the very kind of top of the mind for administrators to make sure they're able to guide students in making sure they're in the full classes to meet CASHA requirements.
Any other discussion or questions? Yes. So I guess you have to recommend it still.
Okay. It is recommended that you approve the 2020-21 high school student handbook.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Mark?
President, I move we approve the high school 2021 handbook as.
Thank you. I have a second. Yes, Scott? Seconds. Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the high school 2020-2021 handbook. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you, Ms. Rector. Next is summer school, and that's you too.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to go ahead and go through the changes that we are making or updating to summer school, because to be honest with you, we would usually be right in the thick of summer school right now. And so because of COVID-19 and all of the changes and regulations associated with being able to attend school, being able to be in certain group sizes and so forth, we did have to make adjustments to our summer school, and we did put that on hold until we could plan to be able to meet the needs of the students and also to be able to be prepared for what may lay ahead of us and when we come into July. So what we decided to do is we decided to focus our summer school on July 20th through July 31st. And so you'll see that that is a much shorter time frame than what we had in the past. We are thinking of this summer school at the elementary and the middle school level as a jumpstart type program. We want to reconnect students as best we can with the school. We want to make sure that the students that need us the very most are able to get back into our schools, to be able to reconnect with staff, to be able to reconnect with the building and kind of get their minds reset for the classroom. And so with this Jumpstart program and thinking about what are students, how they ended their school year. The other piece of this is we thought it was very important for them to be able to go to summer school at their actual school. If you think about how we've done summer school in the past, we've had one elementary building, one middle school, or actually the high school that served both middle school and high school students. So they were going to a location that they weren't familiar with. Thinking through what is it that we need for our students, we need to reconnect them to the schools that they know and the staff that they know. And so we decided to go ahead and have summer school be at each building. So you're going to see summer school at all K-12 buildings. What this means is that it really means a change in the way that we do things. We are actually able to serve a larger number of students, but we're serving them in a smaller size compared to what we had before. So before, where we would have over 300 students at Summer School Elementary, now we're going to have between 60 and 100 students at each of the elementary buildings. And so the elementary principals have been working with their staff to identify students that would be eligible and also to identify staffing that would want to help support us in that summer school program. And so each of our buildings will host summer school. At the elementary, we're going to see that summer, I'll go ahead and go through it in order, excuse me. One of the things that we also I want to point out is that the funding for this is through at-risk funds. One of the things that was eliminated this year was the tuition for the high school. We're only going to be focusing on credit recovery at the high school level. Working with the principals and the counselors, they felt that that was what we needed to, if we were going to put our energies and efforts into what we thought would most benefit our high school students, they felt that it was the credit recovery to keep them on track for graduation. And so with that, we usually had a tuition associated with summer school and credit recovery. We are waiving that tuition because we know that we want to be able to support students in this rough financial times for some families. We also recognize that as our students get started in this 2-week program, we want to make sure that there's no additional stressors on them, and then also recognizing that for some students, the credit recovery is going to be pretty intense. And so we want to make sure that we just kind of take any barriers away and open it up to as many families that want to partake. And then another piece of this is that when we advertised for this, before we used to have an enrollment day where they would come to the building and all enroll. Our directors of elementary summer school and secondary summer school will be sending notifications out to qualifying students, and they've coordinated that with the buildings, and so that information will go out to those families to invite them to be part of summer school. When we look at the high school information, our summer school for there will be a credit recovery. It's going to be English, math, social studies, and science. We are using the same program that we've used before, Edgenuity. And so what we've done with this program is that we have extended it to a 3-hour session instead of the 2 hours of the past. Working with the counselors, we looked at what do we think that students, for them to be able to get through the curriculum in that shorter amount of time, we really needed to have a longer length of time in the classroom. And so that's why you see that that has been extended, and we will offer the courses both at Central and South from 9 to 12. The other piece that we have here is middle school, and middle school again is going to be offered at both the Lakewood Middle School and South Middle School. So we're actually getting it back to the middle schools themselves. And this is going to be project-based learning. They're going to focus on content skills. They're going to be integrating different disciplines and focusing on the social-emotional. And so really, again, connecting those students that they feel are in most need to have an opportunity in the summer. And that is going to be 2 hours because middle school students might not be able to be there the full 3 hours. And so we're going to transition them slowly in and have them for 2 hours. And so that's from 9 to 11 each day. And then at elementary school, this will be at all of the elementary buildings. So we'll have it at all 8 schools. It'll be from 8:30 to 11:30, and they're going to be focusing on reading and math skills. They're also going to have integration of social emotional lessons into the day. And so this will be taught, like I said, at each one of those buildings, and we will send out invitations to families that qualify. Questions about our summer school program?
I have a question.
Yes.
Does it take more staff since you have it at all the different schools?
Yes, it is going to take more staff. And so one of the things that we stepped back and we looked at is the fact that what we traditionally spent on summer school in that longer range We're no longer having the teachers there that 5 to 6 weeks. We only have them there for 2 weeks. And so because of the shorter time frame, we are able to stay within our budget, our summer school budget, to be able to provide these services. So it's for a more intense little space of time, but we are going to have more teachers. The cost is approximately the same as what we had in the past.
Scott, did you have a question?
Yeah, the format seems to be intriguing, so my question to you is, going forward, are you going to adapt? Is this adaptable? Is it sustainable? And how do you see it fitting going forward?
Well, actually, it's kind of exciting because one of the things that we talked about is that for some students, is it better to have a jumpstart type program right before they go back to school more than ending the school year and rolling right into summer school. So actually, we're going to kind of use this as a pilot to see where do we have impact, where are the things that we may be able to take broader into summers in the future. So we are very excited to be able to look and see how does this work, what group of students does it work best for, what families does it work best for, and maybe in our future we might have a couple different formats in summer school. Yes.
So I understand that you can only send out that information because we don't have the parent-teacher contact, but what's the protocol if we don't hear back from them or there's somebody you're really concerned about? Have you guys set that up already?
Actually, yes. One of the things with actually at both areas, the secondary director, she's been working with the counselors and will be working with the administrators. And so at the middle school, she will have a list of the students. We will send that information out. And then as we don't get responses back, we'll kind of, be able to either bring someone in. One of the things I budgeted into this is to be able to have some some classified staff support, so some secretarial support to make phone calls and things like that. So we'll see that both at secondary and elementary. The elementary principals, I had to kind of hold them back not to already invite because they really do want to be able to offer this opportunity to the students. So I have no doubts that the families that don't reach out to us directly, that we will find other mechanisms to try to bring them in and try to support them and encourage them to take part in this. I probably do need to speak to the fact that for some of our families that before they used to have driver's education and some other kinds of enrichment things at the high school level, we will make sure that we have information out on our website in regards to driver's ed. There are some other driver schools here in the state of Kansas, and also, what kinds of things do they need to do for the license. But that will be questions I'm sure many of our families in our community will ask, so we will have something available for them on our website to redirect them to maybe an avenue that can help support them. And then we'll also be working within the schools to make sure any students that had looked at enrichment courses before that want those opportunities, how can we look at it within their schedule? And then also with the ACT prep, that was always a very popular course. And so we'll look at, associated with the ACT dates, what kinds of things can we do maybe within the school, or maybe even some after-school kinds of things as we know our stability when we come back in the fall to, be able to provide that ACT prep form. So hopefully we'll be able to meet their needs in a way other than summer school.
One quick comment on the ACT chart, going back to Dr. I'm sure you've seen lots of colleges going away from ACT or SAT or making it, Bethany's done for one example. I only speak for Bethany, that's probably going to become a permanent thing. I suspect we're going to have less and less reliance on.
We shall see, and I know that the state of Kansas has been encouraging schools to be able to offer that during the school day, and so I think it's going to be a balance to see what is the need out there on the post-secondary level, and then also what do we need to do within our school system to support students who do need that ACT or to prepare them for their next step and get them opportunities. Any other questions? I would recommend that you approve the modifications to the 2020 summer school program as presented.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion? Jim?
Madam President, I move we approve the modification summer program as presented.
Do I hear a second?
The majority second.
Seconds. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the modifications to the 2020 summer school program as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the capital improvements plan with Chris Hudson.
Good evening. I'm here for the second reading of the capital improvement plan. I want to note that the only change that we made from the first reading was that we added a section for our set-aside accounts, basically our savings accounts, and that is at the end of the plan, and it's listed on the table of contents. Are there any questions I can answer about the capital improvement plan?
All right, do I hear a motion to approve the capital improvement plan? Gabe? Is there a second? Dana seconds. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the capital improvement plan as presented. Any discussion?
A lot of hard work. Appreciate how we follow the. Especially like with
Right. Thank you.
good work.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Hearing no further discussion, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Thank you. Last thing is the baseball, softball partnership, Mr. Upton. Is that right?
No, there should be facility use.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a section.
I got
Facility use.
scared a
through
little bit.
summer. Sorry.
Board policy KG provides for the use of school facilities by outside entities, provided that use does not interfere with school district use. As the county's reopening plan continues to evolve and unfold, it became necessary for administration to evaluate facility use during Phase 3 of the county's reopening plan. USD 305 administration recommends the following facility use protocols during Phase 3. Facility use requests for inside our buildings will only be granted for internal requests and only for activities that serve USD 305 students exclusively. So in a sense, that means USD 305 employees requests for practices, training camps, conditioning, etc. for our USD 305 students. Facility use requests for our outside fields shall be granted on a first-come, first-served basis, which is no change from how we've operated in the past. Facility use requests for the South High School natatorium shall be granted on a first-come, first-served basis, which again is no change from the past. And the reason for that is that we disinfect that pool no matter what happens with it, so it's not an additional burden at all to have it open for use. And finally, at all times during facility use sessions, the county's social distancing gathering size guidelines shall be maintained. The primary reason for our recommendations are that we need to serve our students as best we can, we need to minimize risk for our community, and we need to continue to minimize gatherings and activities that require disproportionate levels of cleaning and disinfection. This recommendation is balanced in that it provides opportunities for our students while maintaining a safe and manageable environment until we reach the phase out. It is the administration's recommendation that USD 305 keep its facilities closed to outside the district patrons during Phase 3 of the reopening plan, and with the exception of our outside facilities and the natatorium. Are there any questions about our recommendations?
Will there be a centralized scheduling center or one person that's in charge of scheduling the?
Currently, currently for a long, long time, over the summer months, Susan Lawrence, my administrative assistant, handles all facility scheduling for district stuff.
Okay.
During the school year, that reverts to athletic directors and school administration during the school year. But over the summer, it comes through my office, all of them.
Thank you.
No further questions. I will open it up to a motion. Gabe?
Pouring out school and our outside facilities, facility requests, exclusive use of US.
Thank you, Jim. Seconds. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Thank you. Mr. Upson, you're also next, not with the baseball softball partnership, but with the one-to-one technology on the discussion agenda.
Thank you. USD 305 administration would like to move the district to a more permanent one-to-one configuration for Chromebooks grades K through 12. And as you recall, the last board meeting, I discussed that a little bit, that was our plan to figure out what that would take to do that. Chromebooks are an essential component to the district's flexibility and preparedness. In order to maintain this level of preparedness, USD 305 needs to buy 1,500 Chromebooks each year. That we determined was the magic number. Our Chromebook inventory decreases each year as a result of the following. The seniors take their Chromebooks home with them as a incentive to maintain their Chromebook and not destroy it. We let them take them home with them at the end. So there you lose some Chromebooks after every year for that. Chromebooks break after their warranty period expires, and Chromebooks are lost, stolen, or broken. So broken, most of our Chromebooks are under warranty with Dell's. We went to more expensive Dell's some years ago because they offered a 4-year warranty, which worked very nicely with our high schools because they can be under warranty all 4 years. Sometimes our Chromebooks are aged out of that and they break, we have to replace them. These are some of the ways that we deplete our stock of Chromebooks each year. 1,500 is a large number, but I do want to share that in fiscal year 19, we bought approximately 1,800 Chromebooks that year. And this year we've bought 1,100. So it's not as huge of a number as it might seem with what we've been purchasing year to year. 1,500 each year would allow us to maintain our inventory and achieve one-to-one for rapid deployment in the event the need arises. And that is the real key here, is having Chromebooks assigned to students. They may or may not take them home. That plan is being developed. But that in the event we need to send kids home, that we can quickly get them a Chromebook and off we go, and not have to collect them up from all over and have them transferred across town and these sorts of things. Each Chromebook, now into the details, each Chromebook costs approximately $350. That includes the Chromebook, the protective cover, the GoGuardian account, and the Google management license. So what this looks like for this summer is we will be ordering 400 additional Chromebooks. We already have 750 on order. We've had an order that came in the past that would get us up to the 1,500 this year. And that's what I wanted to bring to you today, that we're recommending that we move forward with that. I don't think any of us can foresee the circumstances changing very rapidly from where they are now. And I think we need to get in front of it and be prepared for maybe years of this. And that this would allow us to do that effectively. Is there any questions I can answer about what we're trying to do? Yes, ma'am.
Does the $350 also cover warranty, or is that additional?
$350 covers the warranty. And if I'm not mistaken, the warranty is parts. Included in the price.
Does that cover upgrades, and are you comfortable with the quality of the Chromebook?
We're very comfortable with the quality of the Chromebooks. We've been through Samsung Chromebooks. That was the first out of the gate. We went with the Samsung Chromebooks, and you can hold them in your hand and know that there's a big difference between the two, just in the weight of them. We're very satisfied with the Dell Chromebooks. As far as upgrades go, the beauty of the Chromebook is the hardware is very simple, and it's basically all software updates, and those happen automatically through our network. So we really don't ever have a need to upgrade the hardware of the Chromebook for its life. And ideally we're looking for 5 to 6 years out of a Chromebook, minus the senior Chromebooks, because they're going to take them away on year 5. But if we went one-to-one, we would say, let's say we buy new Chromebooks for incoming 6th graders, and they have their Chromebook from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. when that batch of Chromebooks makes it out of the 8th grade, it becomes loaner Chromebooks that we use. We have a system for that. Especially in the high schools where a student can't really get the education they need without the Chromebook, because many of the textbooks, if not all, are on the Chromebook. So if they don't charge it or they left it at home, we have ability to do that. And then, of course, those 8th graders coming into their 9th grade year would get their new Chromebook that would serve the rest of their high school time.
The one-to-one Chromebook initial, the additions to the infrastructure, things like that. How's that going to affect other systems that are?
There's always a concern about bandwidth, and I'm not going to get into the details of the terabytes and I don't have that expertise. But what I can tell you is Chromebooks are used extensively at the high school. Textbooks are on the Chromebooks. So a lot of our bandwidth, as far as Chromebooks goes, comes from the high school. We don't see a huge change in how grade schools are going to function with the Chromebooks. We don't see, a classroom full of first graders all on their Chromebooks doing things. What we want to do is be able to have them, they have a Chromebook, it's assigned to them, it's in their classroom on a charging station. Maybe they have some of the Chromebooks removed so that they can do a center, which is how they're used now, is the students rotate through and 4 or 5 of them would be working on the Chromebook for their 20 minutes. So I don't foresee a huge difference in bandwidth when we go to this. Now, Dwight and his shop are always looking at bandwidth because the future is more and more and more bandwidth. But I don't see that with this change alone, us affecting, what we've got to deal with as far as infrastructure.
Servers, and that's always
Right. Which we're constantly updating and saving for. You look at the set aside accounts, et cetera, to try to stay in front of that before our stuff ages out.
I had a question about Go Guardian. Is that what keeps the kids from looking at things they shouldn't? Is that what that is?
Correct. It in very simple terms, yes, it does a lot more than that. One thing to note is that Go Guardian became free when the COVID-19 pandemic happened. The $350 number includes the actually paying for Go Guardian, because we assume that Go Guardian is not going to be free forever, and so that's going to come back into it.
Any other questions?
Okay.
I guess that's all for today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is 2020-2021 Chromebook Handbook. Tiffany Snyder.
Okay. Good evening. It's good to see you all face to face again tonight. I'm here to review proposed changes to our Chromebook for 2021. And the first change is on the title page of the handbook. It is no longer an initiative that we have the Chromebooks. And so we are proposing that initiative is taken out of the title. And so the new title would be USD 305 One-to-One Chromebook Handbook. The next change is on page 1. As Mr. Upson communicated to you, we are wanting to move the district to a more permanent one-to-one configuration. Therefore, we would need to replace high school grade or high school students in grades K-12, since we are wanting to go one-to-one in grades kindergarten through 12th grade. The next change is on page 3. And here we would delete, beginning with the class of 2020, because of we will just do business as students. As they graduate from the high schools, they would receive a Chromebook and case upon graduating from USD 305. And so that sentence would just begin with students will have the option to keep their Chromebook. The next edit is also on page 3, and again, it is removing grades 9-12 to K-12 will be issued a Chromebook. And we are not requiring students, at the bottom of page 3, to read and sign the USD 305 Chromebook agreement. That will be part of the online enrollment process. So as parents go through that, they are just accepting that responsibility to follow those guidelines. On page 6, Mr. Upson also alluded to this. We are not expecting all students to take the Chromebooks home. High school students will continue to do that. However, building administrators will decide or determine who takes those home. So on page 6, since not all grades will be allowed to take the Chromebook home, we added a section that says if a student is allowed to take the Chromebook home each night, they are expected to have the Chromebook charged when they come to school the next day. On page 7, again, since not all students are taking the Chromebook home, we changed the wording to some students may use the Chromebooks at home, and this is going to be determined by the building administrator, and it's based on the educational need of that building. Also on page 7, under rights and responsibilities, again, not all students will be allowed to take the Chromebook home. And so we removed the section where it says locked in his or her locker at all times, because some students, since we have it in our elementaries now, they will house the Chromebooks probably in their classroom, but again, it'll be specified by the building administrator. And then if we go to page 11, one of the questions under frequently asked questions is there an option to buy after 4 years? Again, the way we do business is that students that graduate from USD 305 will get to their Chromebook. So we removed beginning with the class of 2020. Also under frequently asked questions, will students be able to take the Chromebooks home? We striked out yes. Procedures for taking the Chromebook home will be set by the building administrator was added. And finally, the last change is on the last section of the Chromebook, which was the loan agreement. We're proposing that we change the title and remove the signature line to parent and student responsibilities. Again, this is on the online enrollment process. And so once parents go through that, they are accepting the responsibility of the guidelines set in place by this document. Any questions or concern about those changes? Yes?
About the changes, out of curiosity, I noticed you intentionally on the senior part that they have the option to keep it. I'm not sure why somebody wouldn't, but if they didn't want it, go back into the rotation or?
Yes. Because if I remember correctly, they turn them in here, and then they'll have the option to come back and pick them up. And if some choose not to pick them up, then they'll stay.
You have to remove all the.
They're set up only work that and they no longer have.
I see where they're required to, if they take it home, they have to bring it back fully charged. How is it charged if they leave it at school? Because I'm presuming you've got more Chromebooks than you have outlets.
There's each classroom, if the classrooms leave it or the building decides to leave it in their classroom, there are charging stations in that classroom, so they'll leave it there to charge. Otherwise, if it is taken home, then they will have a charger that they will be expected to charge the Chromebook at home.
So as long as it's at the school, then the school is responsible
Correct.
for walking away.
Yeah.
I know that I've seen in the elementary classrooms, they have the cabinet, and they just stick them in the, like,
And
30
all of the
slots,
battery,
and
the
each
chargers
slot
are right there.
Chromebook charge. Any other questions? Yes, Jim.
President, I know our staff is busy this time of year. Wonder if board would entertain us moving this to the action, approving this and the one-to-one technology earlier to allow our staff to move
Is that, what do you think of that? If that's for you, and rather have us wait till the next one, or would you rather have it now?
It is always helpful for us, timeline-wise, to have more time. And so if the board is okay with moving, welcome that. Have more, have additional questions and want to talk about it. We understand that.
Action.
Yeah, that purchase for the additional we still need, you would have to approve that. And so we would go ahead and get that order ready to go, and that order could go then in the next board packet. Then we could go ahead and move forward on that. So that way it would be helpful.
Looks like we're all in
Oh, yeah.
agreement. If someone wants to, we got two motions to make, one on the one-to-one and one on the handbook, so. Don't really have a motion set up for us,
Madam
but
President, I
Jim?
would move that we approve the one-to-one technology.
Thank you. Scott seconded, so it's been moved and seconded that we approve the one-to-one technology change as presented by Mr. Upson. Any discussion on that? Sounds like a good idea to me. So, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. And we have another motion on the handbook, Chromebook handbook. Want to do that too, Jim? Sure.
President, I move we approve Chromebook handbook.
For a second?
Emma Doherty, second.
Emma seconds. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that one? Then all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was getting overly excited about my next, now I have a
Oh, okay. So this is the elementary phonics units of study.
All right, tonight I will be providing information on a proposal to adopt a new phonics program for our kindergarten through second grade. As you may recall, we were doing this by Zoom. I presented on high school text adoption and kind of went over the review criteria that we use whenever we're adopting new text or instructional materials. I will briefly go over that with you again tonight. According to board policy IF-R for textbook and instructional materials, when we're looking to adopt new materials or text, we need to make sure that they are providing effective education for all students, that the information is factual knowledge, it has literary appreciation, it has practice for students to develop ability in critical thinking, and sufficient flexibility for meeting the needs of all learners in the classroom. We also want to make sure that the materials and texts align to our standards, that they have effective teaching strategies, and meet certain criteria for our teachers, which includes organization of the content, the layout of the text, and technology components. In November of 2019, the Kansas State Board of Education approved recommendations for dyslexia. There were 8 recommendations that they proposed, and one of the 8 recommendations requires each school district to utilize structured literacy. And with that, phonics is a component of structured literacy. Mrs. Exline completed listening sessions, as you know, across all of our schools. And at the elementary end, one thing that we repeatedly heard from teachers was the need for a phonics program for our little ones. And so with that information from the State Board of Education, as well as what we heard from our teachers, we determined that we really did need to move forward for school year 2021 to adopt a new phonics program. Whenever we adopt materials or texts, it is critical that we have teacher involvement and that they really do lead that process. They're the ones in the classroom, they have the expertise, and so we want to make sure we are providing them with exactly what they need. So the first step that Dr. Trish Vandre and I took was we got a small group of teachers together in kindergarten through second grade to meet to determine what were their needs for a phonics program, what were they really wanting. And what we found after meeting with them is that they wanted a whole group lesson, a tier 1 resource, which is used with all students, not necessarily a small group component. So once we gathered that information from the teachers, Dr. Vandre and I began researching phonics programs that we could identify that had research to support their effectiveness, and then we brought in 3 different options for teachers to look at. All kindergarten through second grade teachers had the opportunity to review the 3 options. We had 87 teachers participate in the review. I was thrilled with the turnout, especially with COVID-19. As you can imagine, the process was a little more difficult to do, but hats off to Dr. Vandre because she organized 2-hour sessions for teachers to come in and review the materials. And she did a fantastic job organizing that so they could get in and get their hands on the materials. They also had access to online review items for 10 days, as well as being able to come in and actually look at the resources. Once they came in and reviewed the process or reviewed the choices, an email was sent for them to vote. Again, we want them to have the choice, have their top choice, and we had 77 teachers vote on the phonics, and as you can see, overwhelmingly, they chose Units of Study Phonics as their top choice. One thing I left out was when they came in to review the materials at Salina West, they also had to complete our district textbook evaluation form. And so those were available for you to look at if you would like to see those. So they filled out the form, but then they also voted on their top choice, which was the Units of Study Phonics. This resource, as I went through the evaluation forms and read comments and looked at some of the areas that they rated this program high in, the resource really does align well with the standards. Teachers like the fact that it's not replacing reading and writing, but it's a supplement to help students become stronger readers and writers. The lessons are highly engaging. They're very kid-friendly. It incorporates a lot of song, chants, pretend play, as well as writing, reading, and spelling. As you can imagine, for kindergarten through second grade, worksheets don't work well. They're not highly engaging. And that is another aspect of Units of Study Phonics that they really like because it is not worksheet based. Again, a lot of the teaching is done through song, through that pretending, through talking, writing, and spelling, and working together in partners. I do want to be transparent, as with any materials, nothing is perfect. So Dr. Vandre has worked hard to identify what those concerns are, and there were 2 that really came through that we knew we needed to address ahead of time. And one is, has limited text for students to use in shared reading. And so through the Units of Study Phonics, the company that we would like to purchase this through, we would like to order some additional poetry resources and book sets that would help supplement this as well. The other concern was the functionality of the assessment piece that came along with this. However, when we met with that small group of teachers up front and asked them what their wants and their needs were, one thing that they did say is that they are satisfied with our current assessment that we use for phonological awareness and phonics. And so we are going to continue using our assessment that we use to check student progress at the end of each quarter. Dr. Vandre gave a presentation on that early in the fall, the balance assessment system. And so we're going to continue with that. And then if we can find a way to use the assessment that comes with this, as far as like to check for understanding throughout the quarter, then we'll go ahead and do that. But the functionality of the assessment was a concern, but since teachers are pleased with the assessment we currently use, we will continue to use that. What questions do you have for me?
I guess I wonder, what, were they not teaching phonics before?
It was, a lot of the materials were, some teachers would create their own. And we have a supplemental material, Words Their Way. Teachers weren't feeling as comfortable using in the classroom to teach phonics. In the past, years ago, for example, when I was a lead teacher at Meadowlark, we had a phonics program that teachers could really pick up and just use to teach. And when that went away, I think teachers missed that kind of resource. And so this resource may, help. There's going to be some professional development that needs to be done. But for new teachers, especially that come in, I think it will really help them to have something that they can pick up and use in the classroom.
Mark? Yes?
Yes, President Zimmerman, we absolutely have been teaching phonics. And we have, the program Words Their Way is a wonderful research. The challenge is it takes a lot of, and so by us having, especially with our youngest learners, or by us having another resource that is a pick up and use, the teachers can use the two in tandem, and then at grades 3 through 5, our staff can pick up with that word. So this really is, how do we get more consistency in instruction, and how do we get a resource teachers can pick up and use easily, and that partners well with that Words Their Way program.
And to add to that a little bit, with the Words Their Way, we'll continue to use that in grades 3rd through 5th. However, there are word sorts that we can still use in our K-2 classrooms. Again, that will work in tandem with the units of study phonics.
When I talked about this way back, I have mixed emotions. Really have mixed emotions. Okay, that all said, this seems like a reasonable compromise. That if teachers have input on it, it'll be good. But I look forward to seeing what happens along the way. I told Tip the next line in December, I hate having to kowtow to the State Department of Education. They say something's right. You all that are think it's the right. Mm-hmm. But I know we have to do it to some extent. So I think this is a reasonable. This is one I want to.
I know at the Smoky Hill Education Service Center that Darla Smith is putting Zoom or online or maybe even going out and working with teachers throughout the state of Kansas with their superintendents on dyslexia too.
Yes, and
Yeah.
we will, one of the recommendations
I don't know what her program is.
one of the other recommendation is that we provide training to all reading and ELA teachers for dyslexia K-12. And that is something we will have to be doing here in the fall, well, actually into next year. And we're going to do some of that, right away in August, provide some of that training. Dr. Vandre, Mrs. Bay, and I all attended the training with the State Department, so we can provide that to our teachers.
Were there any grants given to any of the schools for this training?
No.
No. Just checking.
Good try.
Good question.
Nice try, huh?
There are times where we're asked to do things that funds don't come with the
Yeah.
ask. And this is an example of that.
I wondered, okay.
I'm curious, do we know how many kids have dyslexia? Or, is there a percentage or is there a number that we have? Do we identify that?
It's hard to, for schools, to determine if a student has dyslexia. I mean, there are, certain screeners that we can give students to see if they struggle with reading, and then we can intervene that way. But it really is something that, they would need to go to their doctor to have a diagnosis of dyslexia. I don't have a number of, you know, the percent.
Dyslexia is on it. So, y'all have.
The question, right?
Yes.
Question I have, is there another
I'm going to have Dr. Van Gray back. She is the one that he was reading that far more eloquent. Perhaps
There are no pieces of units of study of phonics that are designed for pre-K. But through Patricia Haas, who is our early childhood person, we're starting to have a lot of conversations between Heartland and our kindergarten folks. And so I think that we'll be able to do some discussions for sure about what's going on in that units of study phonics for kindergarten and how those items can be taken down into preschool. One of the things that Dr. Snyder mentioned was that the program is very singing related and rhyme and chant, and even the different grade levels have a mascot. The kindergarten mascot is a stuffed elephant named Mabel, and one of the first things that the kids do is learn about names and how your name has different sounds in it and different letters in it, and my name may have some of the sounds and letters that your name has. And so those kinds of playful aspects of the program are things that would make very good sense in a pre-K program, because learning and play go very well together in those younger years especially. So I think there'll be lots of conversations between Heartland and us at the K-12, especially K-2 level, about how we can work together. But there is no set pre-K curriculum that's a part of that program.
I think of that, I'm just told that they're not doing something.
I can't imagine that the kindergarten program especially is all about knowing your letters, knowing your sounds. They bring nursery rhymes back into the conversation and singing your ABCs in different ways, becoming very flexible in your alphabet knowledge, doing shared reading of poems together. So I think it's a lot of the things that you see in pre-K curriculums, but there is no set pre-K with this program.
Any other questions? Then thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time on that, I guess, or is this it? Yes, okay. Now, for the baseball-softball partnership, Ms. Buck.
Good afternoon. My name is Kenny Hancock. I'm here today with my colleague Byron Tomlins. We represent a group called Salina Baseball Enterprises. And Salina Baseball Enterprises, just for those of you that may not be familiar, we're a group of businessmen that have been running and funding and operating and providing the leadership and the management for the American Legion baseball program for the past 35 or so years, Byron, something like that. And we're here today to talk about a partnership between USD 305 and Salina Baseball Enterprises as it pertains to upgrading our baseball and softball facilities here in town. Some of you probably at least know a little bit about the project, the big project that we have been attempting to pass for the last 2 years. And it was an $8 million project that was going to fund 2 baseball stadiums, 2 softball stadiums, and some improvements over at Bill Burke to some of the smaller stadiums or the fields as well. We about had it passed. The city had agreed that they were going to fund $4 million, and we were going to privately fund $4 million. And the day that we had agreed to what's called development agreement with the city, the COVID-19 virus hit, and it was literally within a week of when we were going to present for a final vote with the city commission. And we went online to a city commission meeting and asked that they at least reconsider it in 60 to 90 days, which they did agree to, and that should be coming up soon. But we're very concerned about, we're going to lose a construction season if we wait for the city. And we really don't feel like we have time to do that if we don't want to lose Class 4A baseball and softball. And Kansas Wesleyan, Sacred Heart, USD 305, and Salina Baseball Enterprises all have a partnership going on to try to move this forward with our portion of it. In other words, our $4 million portion of it rather than the full $8 million. So the original partnership was, as you see up there, it had a very aggressive improvement to many of the baseball stadiums and the facilities here in town. And I thought it would be good for you to see that. If you want to ask any questions about it, we can. But tonight we're here to really talk about a partnership that's centered on the softball stadiums over at Salina South High School. This was the original grandiose dream we had. There's Dean Evans Stadium, a new baseball stadium, and in the far at the top of the slide is 2 fully turfed softball stadiums that were going to be used for both baseball and softball, so that the girls softball would have an equivalency to Dean Evans Stadium, so that it would be on parity with the boys. Those are the softball stadiums, yeah. Okay. Because we're not going to be able to do the $8 million project due to lack of funding from the city, at least currently, we modified the project, and we've been meeting ongoing meeting, including with Chris, Byron, and myself, and some others within our organization. And telling my age a little bit, I was one of the original people that designed and built the softball stadiums over at South High School when I was a pitching coach over at South High School. And I thought, there is no better place to get the softball piece of this done than the existing stadiums over at South High with the infrastructure, the great layout that we have over there. So we came up with a plan to fully turf the varsity field, and if funds allow, we would like to fully turf the JV field, but at the very least, turf the infield on the JV field. Plus, we would like to add varsity lights on the varsity field, a concession stand, bathrooms, changing rooms, upgrades to the bullpens and the hitting areas, upgrades to the existing storage shed that's over there, miscellaneous fencing. If we're going to be able to hold tournaments, and hopefully the state tournament, which certainly would be our dream to hold it over there, we would need some security fencing and gating. We've included that in this project and in the cost associated with the project. The big question probably is about artificial turf replacement, because it is our intent to fully turf the varsity field and hopefully fully turf, but at the very least, turf the infield on the JV field. And the question always comes up, what is going to be the replacement cost? I met today with a couple of potential turf suppliers, and our figure up there of replacement cost at 65% turns out it's a little incorrect. It's actually closer to 50%. So it's at least incorrect in the right direction. We're getting between 10 and 12 years lifespan is what they're getting on these fields, depending on how well they're maintained. I happen to know the guy at South High is fastidious about it, and so I'm going to guess we're going to be closer to the 12 than the 10. But even if you budget for 10, it's at about a 50% replacement cost. And we have a cost estimate that we can talk about some specifics on what each individual item will cost in just. Here's some renderings of what our vision is, and this is a long way from being final. This is just what we originally are thinking about to give you an idea. As you can see, this is what's currently the far south field, which has always been the varsity field. We're adding wraparound grandstands that are covered. You can't see it very easily, but there's bullpen improvements and certainly dugout improvements. You can see the covered batting cages that are added, and the turfed infield on the JV field. Here's another view of the same thing, just showing it from a different angle. I think the grandstand, the wraparound grandstand was a big thing because Kansas Wesleyan is going to play there, and they're a contributor to this project, and they would like to be able to have a press box and a covered grandstand to more fully support their program, and they're 100% confident, if you can be 100% confident, that they'll be able to bring their league tournament here, because it's currently played in Great Bend, where there isn't even a school in the league, but they could bring it here, and they believe they'll get the national tournament here as well, a regional national. Here's another view, this one from the first baseline. You can see how the grandstands look. They're covered. You know, typically you go to fields that are back-to-back, foul balls are a problem. We covered these grandstands so that foul balls should not be a problem from the adjoining field. Just another view of essentially the same thing, this one on the third base side. Here's the cost estimate, and it's $1.38 million, and that's the raw cost to do it. That does not include architecture fees. It doesn't include any contingency and any permit costs and things like that. This is just a raw cost to do it. We went so far as to put together some value engineering items in case that the budget isn't adequate to do everything we want. We've kind of got these in order of the things that we would delete in order to get the project done to where we can get it done within the allotted funds. And this is the total of all the project. And so I'm going to circle back to Dean Evans. The partnership between Solana Baseball Enterprises and USD 305 is for baseball and softball, meaning the softball fields at South High would take care of, obviously, the softball, but we, Solana Baseball Enterprises, intend to fully renovate Dean Evans Stadium, and we got permission from the City Commission to do that last Monday. So we are going to take the full cost of that on our own as privately and do that. And, of course, USD 305 plays all of their games at Dean Evans. So they'll benefit from having a completely renovated Dean Evans Stadium as well as the softball stadium. Total cost of the project is about $3.85 million. We believe that's pretty conservative based on some numbers that we've been going back and getting some latest data on. Plus, it has a nice contingency in there, more than $250,000 in contingency on top of that. So I'll open it up for questions.
Any questions?
What's your time frame to get this done as far as the softball fields go?
They'll probably be concurrent. We would like, if we get permission, well, we have it from the city, but if you all are in agreement, we can start at least the baseball stadium at Dean Evans shortly after the American Legion season is over, and that is at the end of July, right? So we kind of have targeted August 1st. We'd like to be able to do both of them starting on August 1st. I talked to Bria Campbell, the coach at South High. She's got a camp over there that will end the week before August 1st. I talked to her today to confirm this. So August 1st works really great, and it can be completed sometime in November. So it would be ready to play on next year, as early as February for the Kansas Wesleyan group. Now, will we be a little bit later on constructing the toilets and some of the other amenities? Maybe, not necessarily, but maybe. But the big piece of it is getting all the turfing done, which is really our goal. But we'll do those others simultaneous with the turf, and I'm guessing it'll all be completed. But if anything's late, it might be the concession stand or completion of the bathrooms or something like that.
Mark?
Recognize and appreciate the partnership part of all of this. I wonder if you all have talked about who's in charge of scheduling, who gets top priority if there's a date conflict.
We have talked about that. The high school athletic directors and the Kansas Wesleyan athletic director have been meeting on that and deconflicting schedules. The bottom line is this becomes a USD 305 facility under the control of USD 305. And right now, the way it's written is USD 305 takes priority, and then Kansas Wesleyan after. And they have crunched their numbers for the next season and are able to figure that out. It looks a little different for South High School South High School had fields that they practiced on and played on, and nobody ever went there unless you were a little T-baller. Nobody ever went there and played on those fields. They were just their fields. It's a little different. It'd be a little different now in that we tend to like, much like we do with the Salina Stadium, we tend to like to have a team be able to come practice on the turf right before a game that they might have the next day on the turf. So deconflicting that sort of logistical issue is possible, and that would be the goal. We have really, really good athletic directors. KW has a really good athletic director, and everybody wants to get along. I'm confident that we can make that happen. An eventuality of this is that this all needs to be in writing. If KW is going to put in money, they're going to want something in writing, and that was what we were going to do with the city anyways on contributions to the $8 million project, is so that it was all in writing. And that would be certainly necessary with this concept, is that we would have a similar agreement that the city would not be involved in naturally, but that KW would be, that lays out priorities and who gets to decide.
One thing, if I may add to your question, I can tell you that the scheduling for the spring at Dean Evans for the baseball is exactly the same. USD 305 is in the #1 slot.
Question on that, and maybe under the ability for public, are we able to prioritize an outside entity?
Can you reframe the question?
Okay, I guess I realize that we can say USD 305 has primary to that. If we have baseball group wants to use that softball field in Kansas, are there any fair use rules saying Kansas Wesleyan has priority over any other?
The agreement that we would have to strike with Kansas Wesleyan, should we go down this path, would need to supersede some of what's in board policy right now. What's in board policy right now is outside entities can use our facilities as long as it doesn't interfere with school activities. But what we're talking about is Kansas Wesleyan becoming a different sort of outside entity based on their contributions to the project. And we would have to work through that to make sure that that's all on the up and up.
It would be a little bit like in the pool. The Salina Aquatics are, of course, our swim teams, boys and girls swim teams, both have priority to the pool. The second then is Salina Aquatics Club, and then after that, there is now the pool's a little bit of an anomaly because of the insurance pieces and all of that go with it. But it would be a similar agreement to what we have with Salina Aquatics. Have first opportunity after our own event.
And I used the word supersede in the same sentence as board policy, and that wasn't correct.
And I'm just asking as a
Accessibility to the fields would still be the same as they are now? And then the scheduling in the summer, would that be you guys?
You can talk.
Yeah, the summer, realize that the summer is different than the spring, because when school gets out, as far as the baseball goes at Dean Evans, the Salina Baseball Enterprises, which supports the American Legion, since Dean Evans was built, we did a partnership to build Dean Evans, so we've had first priority in the summer. With us totally underwriting Dean Evans, that would be extended to the year, another 25 years. It was due to come due in the year 2025, but we will extend it another 25 years. So in the summer, Salina Baseball Enterprises would be first priority for their teams. After that, availability is up to the city to schedule as they see fit. I would then turn to Mr. Upson on the softball fields in the summer for schedule.
currently, as far as softball goes, the scheduling of that field reverts through my office during the school year. We talked about facility use this evening. During the school year, that runs through administration at the school. Over the summer, it runs through my office. That's how it would continue. We have talked that there is a potential, and he might be bumped me on the head for talking about it. There is a potential for having American Legion girls softball, potentially. And these gentlemen have asked that if, in the event that happens, could our agreement be that they get the same sorts of access to the softball fields at South High for American Legion softball, much like they have at Dean Evans? And so we'll work through those details. But currently, under the current situation, that scheduling would come through my office and be as it normally was, first come, first serve, et cetera.
I have a question. In a normal year, does baseball, like baseball, USD 305 baseball, does it end by the end of the school year, or does it go on into the summer?
You know, that's a great question. Our exclusive rights start after the 4A state tournament are over. So if they go long, we are pegged to the 5A state tournament, and they're all on the same weekend, so it doesn't matter. We are pegged to that date, and then August 31st, is that what it is? From the next Monday after the state tournament to August 31st is when we have priorities. So we're never in conflict with any high school sport.
We are under the regulations of the Kansas State High School Athletics Association. We cannot start our program until every team has ended in Salina. And basically the same player, with only a few exceptions, the same players that are playing high school baseball are then playing Legion baseball. And so even if their team gets eliminated early, we cannot start until the state tournament's in. So usually our scheduling's around May 28th to 31st, depending upon the different dates, and goes to August 31st. Very seldom are we still playing in August 31st in today's world, because now the colleges have started earlier, and so we've had to move our schedule back. Usually we're done by August 1. It's just that the time frame still remains August 31st, just in case we want to host a national regional, which we did do in 1994.
Go ahead.
Question specifically for you. In dealing with the softball, would this position Salina for some of those upper echelon tournaments like the Firecracker Specials and things of that nature going forward?
Well, I'd be guessing if I said yes, but that's our plan. And that's one of the reasons we want to do it. You know, we're perfectly located at the crossroads of two major highway systems. And we have the great downtown going on, and we have the great hotel thing. We think that Salina should be a baseball, softball destination, and the studies that we looked at agreed with us. And so does Visit Salina. They are really behind our project. They were behind the $8 million project as well as this project. So yeah, the answer is yes, we believe so. And you know, one thing, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The one thing that we didn't actually talk about was there are so many games that get rained out in spring in Kansas because we have so much pressure on these fields and the weather doesn't care. And I can tell you, Byron and I played college and semi-pro baseball together, and we'd much rather play on grass and dirt. But the fact is, you can't get grass and dirt ready for 4 teams to play when it rains, and turf is really going to eliminate scheduling problems because the only thing you're going to get is lightninged out. You won't get rained out because it will drain off, and it has a drainage system that just goes straight down, and you can play the minute it stops raining if there's no light.
Yeah.
That was one of my questions because I don't really understand that or don't know much about it. Second question, I don't think this is going to happen, but if the city of Salina were to come back and say, yes, we do have some funds, is there a place for them in this? Is there?
There really is, because we're carving out Dean Evans, we're carving out very specific pieces. Well, our grandiose project had many other opportunities for them, and we already met with Mike Schrag and the city managers, and we told them, here's what we want to do. This will be left for you guys to do. We were pretty surgical in how we divided this up. there is definitely a place for them to come in and spend their $4 million. We even offered to be project management for them so they don't have to hire an outside consultant like they did on the field house and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it.
Mark, did you have something?
Yeah, just a quick question. I've been Parks and Rec Board for 4 or 5 years, and heard you guys talk there about the $8 million project. My point now is we're on the discussion agenda here. Chris, I assume this will be back on the action agenda next time around. What do we need to do to keep things moving on? And everybody agrees.
Approve it. Approve us continuing the work. What it'll look like is, we need to have the agreement in place that you all need to approve. I think before we go too much further, we need to have that in writing. The funds are being set aside. We've saved for a couple of years now on those. In a nutshell, the approval of the agreement, and then what would come to you is bids would start coming to you for the work at South High.
We need to do, first thing that we need from you is for you to tell us, Chris, actually work on formalizing an agreement, because that's going to take some time. And so we want to know if we have board support to move forward with that agreement. And then once we have that nod, Chris will work with Baseball Enterprises and get that agreement in place. Aaron will work with them, and then we would bring that back for your review. At that point, then we would need the nod that yes, this agreement is what we want, and the commitment of on our side. So we really need that nod first that yes, you want us to go ahead and spend time developing the partnership and coming to Kansas West. Because we're kind of starting over now that we've pulled the city of Salina out. So this was enough of a left to come before you and make sure your questions were answered. And so if there are additional stones that we need to turn in order for you to feel comfortable giving the nod for us to start that agreement discussion, we'd like to.
I know where I was going. If this is something else we need to move from the discussion agenda today. My part, I'm okay with that. That would speak long. I don't want to rush things unduly.
Well, and I'll speak up a little bit. When we got the approval on last Monday from the city that we could, and it seemed like a no-brainer. We asked them to let us give them $2 million, and they were able to say yes to that. And we Byron and I decided to reopen up the discussions with all the different potential suppliers. We haven't sent any RFPs out. We haven't got any hard bids in, but we are meeting this week, and I met with 2 of them today. I'm going to meet with 2 or 3 more turf suppliers tomorrow just to make sure they're still interested. Byron and I had visited 3 or 4 fields from every one of 4 potential turf. We wanted to make sure of the quality of their product. So we have already done the homework from the last go-around, and we're revisiting with everyone, not assuming that they're still interested. I was told today by 2 people, there's never been a better time in the 20-year history of this one person of doing this. Many projects are being delayed for a variety of reasons, and these people want to keep their crews busy, and they want to keep their workers together. The prices have never going to be better to get turf for both Dean Evans Stadium and Salina South than it is right now.
Madam President,
Jim?
be open to it. Move it to action agenda. And
You're getting good at this, Jim. I think it's all kind of nodding. I think.
Yeah,
we're not. And this comes with new board members, I guess I'd say in advance of this, is our board previously gave the nod. And so that would kind of tie into the motion.
We've been nodding several.
Yeah. So
We're painfully aware.
But I would move that our board continue to endorse the partnership with Salina Baseball Enterprises in lieu of changes that have occurred due to COVID-19.
Got second. So you're moving that we continue to endorse the project. That in light of, I think, the changes that they're presenting. Is there any discussion?
One comment to the last. I work thinking about turf is exactly correct. If you haven't heard, we're replacing the turf on Anderson Field right now, and it was a quick turnaround. Available. Turf is being down.
It's really amazing how quick they can do it.
Oh, yeah.
I had someone ask me today and I couldn't answer. Do you know the turf company that Bethany chose?
Easily find out, but I'm not.
He asked me and I didn't know because we were in this discussion today and they asked me and I didn't know, so I thought maybe you knew.
Scott, you have something?
One more, Mr. Hancock. Understanding that there were drainage issues at Dean Evans, do you perceive that there might be any at the South High Fields? I know traditionally they've drained very well.
Great question. First of all, let me answer. You didn't ask a question, but let me respond a little bit to Dean Evans. That field has had drainage nightmares for 20 plus years. Everyone knows that that's been out there. Year and a half ago, we meaning Salina Baseball, told the city what needed to be done, and they said, we simply don't have the money. And we said, we got you. We'll pay for this. We finally convinced them that it had to be done. They took the bids on their own. I'll give them some credit. And it is completed. It's done. These torrential rains we've had, the field is bone dry. So we showed them how to do it, and I'll give them a little credit. They actually put it into action and got that completed. South High, we talked about this, Chris and I and Byron. South High is truly one that seems to drain pretty well. We think there's a couple of areas that we can improve on, but in general, and we actually have some drainage ditches already there and some swales. We don't see there being a big problem. And the good news is with these turf fields, they have a perimeter drain that goes completely around and buried, and it's about an 18-inch pipe with perforated holes. So the water doesn't run on or off, it just goes straight down through. So any run-on water would end up draining away anyway. So we don't anticipate it. You never know when you get in there, but I doubt it. I doubt it.
Any other comments or questions? Then we have a motion to continue to endorse the baseball-softball partnership as it's proceeding. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried. 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Byron and Ken. We are now to the school board reports and upcoming dates of importance. I think we'll just start with Mark down there.
Well, it's been a quiet month since we last gathered. And education, the only thing I have there is working very well together and starts on July 1st, understand it. Work coming in and we talked a little bit last session about Parks and Rec, and frankly, I'm a little bit dismayed with that. Parks and Rec hasn't met at all, anyway, since COVID things. I sent Mr. Cotton an email at one point asking for a report and got nothing back. So whenever we do have a meeting, I intend to ask some questions. Steve and I should talk about that. See,
I'll shut you down. Got it.
that's all I have.
Thank you, Jim.
No report.
Dana?
Yes, I went to a CKCIE meeting, and I will let Gabe talk about that. You're welcome. And I wanted to tell you that, and I just found this out today, but they're having a charity golf tournament called Tee Off for Charity for the Salina Education Foundation, and it is June 19th from 2 to 6 p.m. It's suggested donation of $25 for an individual, $50 for a family, and I just think some of that money could go to our Salina Education Foundation, which would be amazing. So hopefully people will go out and play.
Thank you. Gabe?
CIE Board of Control met last Wednesday, an earlier meeting date than is typical for group, but with this information being available and budget clarity, they decided to meet early. $215,500 in CARES money related to federal COVID-19 co-op. The big topic of the day was was approved by the group was a 2.9% assessment, with that amount to a $490,000 increase to USD. New year. Go up. For some discussion, on a budget way, adding over the several years. Part of the reason agreement of those other why budget is allow a lot of flexibility to for agility to meet needs. Hopefully there were other possibilities on that discussion. 1.9 assessment increase. That's the most budget.
Thank you. Scott, got any reports?
I don't have a report, but with your permission, I do have a request of Mrs. Exline and Mrs. Reck. If you could please, going back to the summer school, once summer school is over, if you could give us a report on how that went. Specifically, I'm interested in the customization of the program and what metrics you're using to justify the decisions going forward as far as selecting which curriculums to offer at the various school levels and how those things will be implemented, if you don't mind.
We asked.
Thank you.
Emma?
Hi, on May 14th, I attended the Smoky Hill Education Service Center board meeting, and at that board meeting, they discussed the sale of the 9th Street property. So all the offices for the Smoky Hill will be on Crawford Street now. And of course, on that building, they've are remodeling it to accommodate the people. Also on the Crawford Street parking lot, I mentioned before they were going to have Maori Clinic and Elmore Center, I call it, but anyway, and the Smoky Hill all combined to help contribute to the reparking. Well, Maori Clinic and Elmore Center kind of backed off with the COVID, but we feel with the safety and the way the parking lot is at the Smoky Hill that needs to be resurfaced. So Chris, the executive director, Chris, I can't always pronounce his last name.
That's
Modelberg. Yeah, Modeling. Anyway, he's looking into some grants because one superintendent recommended that maybe there would be a grant available somewhere in the state of Kansas that would help with the resurfacing of the of the parking lot. Anyway, that was about it. They too had a golf tournament scheduled for June 1 for their big fundraiser, but it had to be canceled. And they're doing their team building in virtual classrooms and workshops. They have family engagement June 30th with the virtual workshop, and the Smoky Hill Education Center will be 30 years in operation, and they want a big celebration on July 1. I'm not sure what all this celebration entails. When I find out at Thursday's meeting, I'll let you know. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
I continue to attend these Zoom meetings from Discovery Education. It's called Equity Talks, and they've had a lot of really interesting things. But this time, I think it was the best so far. It was, well, from my point of view, because it was people on school boards, and they've had a lot of superintendents talking about equity, and this time it was school board members. Who was the president of the school board of Inglewood, California, which I think is in the Los Angeles area, and the vice president of the Ithaca, New York school district, and it was really it had some really great, interesting things, and I can't tell you any of them because I left my notes somewhere else. But if anyone wants to watch that, it's a 45-minute discussion that really had some good stuff, and I have the link, so I'm happy to share that. We also had a local Zoom discussion of what it means to be Black in Salina. I sat through that, and I listened in on that, and they asked some questions about the school district. So I was able to answer some of those questions, and I participated in the Light Up the Night peaceful protest and the Black Lives Matter march downtown. So it's been a really interesting time, especially the march downtown, just with about 3 or 4 blocks long. It was really amazing to have all those people come out with very little advance notice. So that's all my reports. I guess we are now to the superintendent's report. Mark. Yes.
Quick thing, Mr. Tomlin asked you in Bethany's Field.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Exline for your report.
Okay, just a few things to report. I did a presentation for the Rotary about COVID-19 and the impact on our schools and on education. I have been meeting with principals, representatives, leaders to discuss contingency. We know that there's a possibility that school could be normal, or that we could have to abide by some social distancing guidelines, that we might have to look at some contingency for intermittent schooling. And so we started to have those that as that goes farther, fully up again. And then the last thing is that Roundup done virtually. We always have our families in, and it's such an exciting time when our youngest learners come into the building and are very excited about being in Coherent. We had to do that in a different way, and so our elementary virtual roundup was in order. Our messages, messages, and we did that virtually. We're still rounding up our learners and are getting so it feels a little bit different. The final thing that I want to say is I do want to talk about, I think that our Black staff, our Black students, our Black families need to hear from me. And so in recent weeks, I know that we've all experienced across our country outrage. And the murder of George Floyd is just a reminder that our work is not. I want our students to know that Black Lives Matter. I want them to hear that from me. And now especially, the role of education is critical. We have the chance to change. So we take that very seriously, and I know that education offers hope. So because of the needs in our district, we do have our Equity Council, and our Equity Council is hard at work. The Equity Council has been working on training. We need to educate ourselves, staff, on how we can our council will continue to develop training for our staff, build understanding biases, and how those biases impact what happens in the classroom. We will also continue to review policies and practices in USD 305 and bring recommendations to you to make sure that we have equitable action. During our strategic plan listening session, I was groups of students, and I got to hear directly, very unlike, and it was important for me to hear from students whose experiences were so different. And I know that we owe our students schools. They feel heard and where they feel. And I know that our journey is far from over, but we remain committed to the work that we have to do. And so I just want to acknowledge that there is much done and that we will continue.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is executive sessions. So we need to start out with an executive session for negotiations. So Erin, what shall we?
Let's do 15 minutes.
15? All right. Somewhere in the back of our materials are.
I can go ahead.
Yes, Emma.
Okay, I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 6:50 for how many minutes? 15 minutes for the purpose of discussing employer-employee negotiations, because if this matter were to be discussed in open session, it might jeopardize resolution of the negotiation issues, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 7:05.
Emma, we're gonna need you to redo, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's 6:51 right now.
Oh, okay.
So if we could go into 6:55 to 7:10, so if you would redo the
Okay.
motion.
Okay, I move that the Board of Education go to executive session at 6:55. Okay, yeah, I forgot about that. For 15 minutes for the purpose of discussing employer-employee negotiations, because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might jeopardize resolution of the negotiation issues, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 7:10 in the board conference room. Thank you.
Jim seconds. Been moved and seconded that we go into executive session for negotiations. Coming back out at 7:10. Jim, yes. Is there any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you.
We're back in open session,
Yes.
and do I have a motion to adjourn? Jim,
Emma Doherty, second.
it's been moved to second that we adjourn. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Thank you very much. See you next time.
I'm glad we could
So
be
do we have to
together.
do